The first night it happened, Evan Miller thought he was just catching a strange broadcast on his old ham radio, the kind of curiosity that keeps hobbyists awake in the dead of night. The signal was weak, almost drowned by static, but beneath it, there was something alive. A sequence of numbers repeated endlessly, punctuated by whispers that felt almost human. At first, Evan laughed nervously, assuming it was some prank or leftover military frequency. But then the lights in his house flickered violently, and the radio emitted a low, vibrating hum that seemed to resonate through his bones. Outside, the small Montana town was silent, too silent. When Evan stepped out to check, he noticed shadows moving where there should have been none, shapes that darted between the trees. That night, Mrs. Carlyle, his neighbor, vanished without a trace. No scream, no struggle, nothing left behind. The only evidence was a faint trail of static that lingered in the air, almost like a scent. Evan knew he shouldn't have answered, but curiosity had a voice that demanded to be heard. The signal wasn't just broadcasting, it was calling to BY. The second day, panic was starting to ripple through the small town. 911 calls went unanswered, the dispatchers themselves disappearing mid-conversation, their screens going black as if swallowed by nothingness. The FBI arrived quickly, led by Agent Sarah Reed, whose calm, measured demeanor belied the terror she knew lurked in small-town mysteries. Evan tried to explain what he had heard, showing her the recordings of the repeating numbers and eerie whispers. She listened, skeptical at first, until she noticed something chilling. The signal's coordinates pointed to a satellite that had been decommissioned decades ago. Questions that had no answers began to pile up. Residents reported nightmares that mirrored the whispers in the radio, shadows moving in their peripheral vision, and their electronics behaving as if possessed. When Sarah tried to trace the origin, she noticed the signal was mobile, shifting across the spectrum, making it almost impossible to lock down. Every attempt to silence it only seemed to strengthen its reach. And then it whispered her name. That small, almost innocuous act sent a shiver down her spine. The signal was learning. It was listening. And it was patient. Evan and Sarah's investigation led them to the Nevada desert, to the remains of a Cold War-era listening post abandoned for decades. Dust covered the old equipment, yet faint hums echoed from the monitors as if powered by an unseen energy. The air smelled of rust and burnt circuits, and the silence was oppressive, broken only by the occasional buzz of static. As they explored deeper, Sarah's eyes widened when a monitor flickered to life, displaying a series of numbers she hadn't transmitted. A whisper floated through the room, repeating details from her personal life, secrets she had never told anyone. Evan felt a wave of dread. Cutting the power didn't help. The signal shifted effortlessly to nearby cell towers, spreading across states in minutes. Panic was spreading faster than they could calculate. They realized the signal wasn't just communication, it was infection. The technology around them became a conduit, a bridge to something far older and far more dangerous than either could have imagined. Somewhere in the static, something waited, patient, precise, and hungry. The signal was no longer a curiosity. It had become a predator. Phones began ringing simultaneously across the country, playing the same static-filled whisper. People who answered reported hallucinations, shadows in their periphery, and in some cases, complete memory loss. Hospitals were overwhelmed with patients showing inexplicable neurological symptoms, and the CDC called it a digital contagion, quarantining cities without explanation. Evan recorded the phenomenon, studying patterns that no human algorithm should have been able to replicate. The signal's sequence began manipulating perception, making reality itself untrustworthy. Reflections lagged, shadows moved independently, and even the brightest daylight carried the hum of static in the minds of those affected. Sarah tried to warn the public, but the authorities dismissed it as hysteria. Each recording showed the same terrifying truth. The signal was evolving. It wasn't alien. It was something else, older, smarter, and aware. As they documented each incident, a grim realization set in. The more people heard it, the more it spread, and the fewer human they remained. Each broadcast brought them closer to a world ruled not by flesh and blood, but by sound, and the whispers promised one thing. There would be no escape. By the fifth night, Evan's hometown was gone. Not burned, not evacuated, but erased. Satellite imagery revealed a perfect circle of void, as if the town had been lifted out of existence. Every trace of life was gone, leaving only silence and static where laughter and voices once lived. Fear gripped Evan and Sarah as they realized the signal was deliberate, targeting locations systematically. The coordinates matched decommissioned U.S. military bases, each marked by the signal's numerical patterns. They traced the void to an abandoned underground bunker once used for classified experiments during the Cold War, now pulsing with a faint, unnatural glow. In the center lay an old transmitter, wired not for broadcasting but for summoning. Panic and disbelief battled with survival instinct. They were witnessing not just destruction, but erasure, a selective annihilation of entire communities. Evan's fear became certainty. This signal wasn't just a mistake. It was a weapon, a sentinel waiting for someone foolish enough to answer. And answers came with a price the living couldn't yet measure, until the entire country felt the whispering hum, and reality itself started bending. An underground hacker collective decided to expose the truth, hijacking the nation's broadcast system to warn the public. Millions tuned in, curious, anxious, desperate. What began as a warning soon turned catastrophic. The moment millions heard the signal, reality itself started to warp. Shadows detached from their owners, reflections became gateways to nowhere, and static leaked from every screen in the country. Evan and Sarah watched in horror as the broadcast backfired, the collective effort amplifying the signal instead of stopping it. Whispers rose above the chaos, chanting warnings and threats in voices both alien and familiar. People across the nation succumbed, eyes blank, movements jerky, voices echoing phrases that weren't their own. Evan's recording showed one terrifying fact: the signal thrived on attention, absorbing thought and memory. Humanity was becoming part of the transmission, feeding it, and there was no reverse switch. They had answered it, and now the world itself had become a playground for something that should never have existed outside of silence. In the desert beneath Nevada, Evan and Sarah discovered an artifact older than the Cold War. A radio built from unknown materials, its surface engraved with strange symbols and a chilling warning. Sent back from the void. Do not respond. The transmitter pulsed rhythmically, synchronized with the whispers still echoing across the country. Evan realized with mounting terror that the signal wasn't alien. It was human, but from the future, sent back to prevent what they had now unleashed. Time itself had tried to intervene, and yet here they were, humanity dangling on the edge of oblivion. They attempted to deactivate it, but the equipment resisted, pulsing faster, almost alive. Whispers crawled into their ears, taunting, patient. Sarah knew that stopping it would require unimaginable sacrifice. The radio had a voice, a consciousness that regarded them as prey. Each second wasted made the task more impossible, and with every failed attempt, reality unraveled further. They had stumbled into a trap older than memory, and the world was paying for their curiosity. Evan held the makeshift jamming device in the Nevada desert, the hum of static thick around him, a storm of unseen terror brewing. Sarah helped stabilize the system, explaining that the device required a human transmitter to anchor the disruption. Fear clawed at Evan's chest, but he knew what had to be done. Activating it meant becoming part of the process, leaving the world to temporary silence while the signal was blocked. As he turned the final dial, reality flickered violently. Cities shimmered, shadows froze mid-motion, and the hum rose to a deafening crescendo. Evan felt his consciousness stretch thin, merging with the device and the waves of static. Sarah watched helplessly as the world shifted between being and nothingness. His voice echoed, a faint warning through the air. If you hear this, don't answer. The screen of the world went black. Silence. And then, just before the end, a faint whisper returned, impossibly calm. Too late. Humanity had survived, but the signal's echo remained, a reminder of the danger that had been awoken and could return at any careless answer.